Good morning. It's Thursday morning here at Beach Retreat. We know it's been an incredible week for you, and today we're going to finish out Brian's story, and we're going to finish out the story of Peter as well, so check this out.
All right, have a good one. You guys have a great day. Man, I'm proud of you, but you're just getting started. Oh, here it is. Your biggest fear is public speaking. I want you to show up to this address on Thursday night. Brian, I see you in the back there. Come on up here, buddy.
What, stand-up comedy?
Yeah.
This is gonna ruin any chances I have of having a positive reputation.
I'm gonna bring down devastation on you like you've never known.
Brian. So, who likes to eat at 4? Show of hands. Mr. Russell? You wanna see me?
Hey, Brian.
Sorry about last night.
You killed it.
No, I didn't.
I'm proud of you, seriously. You ready for your third and final assignment?
I guess.
It's a big one. You're gonna confront Tevin.
What?
Yeah. It's time that you stand up to that guy.
You're crazy. There's no way I'm gonna do that.
You can't take that stuff from him anymore, okay? You need to stand up for yourself and be a man.
What do you want me to do, fight him?
No, that's not what I'm saying. But
Look, I'll play your silly games, but this is suicide.
don't be scared. I mean, this is your biggest test, Brian. It's your third and final act, your big climax, Don't let your ending be boring.
I'm not boring anymore.
You need to do this. If you don't, I'll fail you.
You can't do that. I have a C.
Well, you have to complete all the assignments to pass, no exceptions.
I thought you were the cool teacher.
You think I care if you think I'm cool? That's what makes me so cool.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, Kelly.
I want to tell you that your little stand-up routine last night you did really inspired me. So I want to do something that I've been too afraid to do, and you got to come with me. Hi, Mr. Cranston.
Kelly?
One day I was really sick. You made your famous soup. I felt really good the very next day. I love your soup, soup, soup. I love your soup, soup, soup. I love your soup. I love your soup. I love your soup. Solo. I love your soup, soup, soup. I love your soup, soup, soup. I love your soup, your soup. I love your soup.
You did great today.
Thanks to you.
I don't know about that. So, what do you think about Tevin?
Tevin James? He's definitely a big jerk.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, but I don't really hold it against him too much, though.
Really? Why?
Yeah, just because his parents, he's got it really rough at home. And I know his dad is in jail, and I know his mom is really crazy, like really crazy, so.
Wow. I didn't know that. Thanks for today. I needed it.
You're welcome. You can keep a cowbell. You're professional.
I decided to do it. Mr. Russell's right. I'm gonna stand up to Tevin. Whew, whew. At his own house. Surprise him. What? Yeah. He's not gonna know what hit him. Forget about it.
Take a look at my city, my life is hard. No, it sure ain't pretty, but I finna make a million. You can get some with me, my life is hard. I got a crazy life story. Not even 30 yet, been a crazy life for me. Half of my partners been sentenced to life. doomed to live in the box for the rest of their life. Snow dealing, trying to make some more millions. So many deaths like I got no feeling. We trying to get that paper, we trying to stack that cheddar. I watch my back for haters, we gonna make it better. Life is hard, you could
What are you doing? Oh my...
You don't take many risks in life, do you?
I'm a high schooler, Mr. Russell. We don't normally do things out of our comfort zone.
Every good story has somebody doing something that they don't want to do, you know, something heroic.
Brian, here, come on, man. I'm not really sure what to say right now. I never knew a cowbell could hurt so bad. I mean, what? A cowbell? What? Why?
It's all I had in my car. I followed you here.
What? Why?
I was going to fight you.
Man, I want to say I'm sorry for just all the junk.
Don't worry about it.
Those guys probably would have killed me.
I know. So, what can I say about this week? I mean, it's crazy what you can do when you just, I guess, step outside your comfort zone. So much has happened. I helped Tevin out, something I thought I would never do. Maybe even got a girlfriend. Got a black eye, which is pretty awesome. It's just, I didn't expect any of this at all.
Brian?
Yeah?
Someone's at the door for you.
Callie, what are you doing here?
I heard what you did. I follow @TevinIsAwesome on Twitter. He tweeted everything that happened. So, Brian, I wrote a song about it. He called out my name in the hall. I didn't know what he wanted at all. I just stepped it up and asked me out. Done the craziest thing. You saved my life and you made me sing. You're brave and strong.
Brian. Man, you passed. Needless to say, with a B. Man, I'm telling you, I am so impressed. I mean, that was inspiring.
Mr. Russell, without you, I wouldn't have done any of this. Thank you. I just don't know what to say.
We did it, Billy.
When I put the lions and the tigresses to sleep, they looked at me with startled eyes and weep. Lying on their backs, wondering where did we go wrong. They realize that I am not the one.
Well, today, as Brian's story winds down, really, ours is just beginning. All through the week, we've gotten to see Brian overcome these obstacles that seemed very daunting. He's had to do a lot of things that pulled him way outside of his comfort zone. So today, we get to see Brian face up to his greatest obstacle of all, his greatest fear. He has to face up to his bully, the one that was calling him a loser, telling him he was nothing, he wasn't enough, he wasn't good enough, and he was never going to amount to anything, and he was terrified. You can imagine being terrified because all of us have experienced that kind of fear when it comes to some kind of obstacle in our life, a fear that we have to overcome, an obstacle that we have to overcome because he was never going to experience the full meaning of what he was intended to experience unless he faced up to this obstacle. Now, in Peter's life, he had to face up to an obstacle that was going to keep him from being all that God had created him to be. In Matthew chapter 26, we see right before Jesus is crucified, he's with his disciples, and he says, all of you are going to turn away from me tonight. And Peter, who always the first one to speak up, steps up and he says, I will never turn away from you. Even if everyone else does, I won't. Jesus looks at Peter and he says, Peter, you don't know what you're talking about. Before the rooster even crows, before daybreak in the morning, you will have denied me 3 times. And Peter says, no way. I will die before I ever deny you. And you don't see any kind of response from Jesus. You can imagine how Jesus might have responded and just said, okay. But later on in the chapter, we see that as Jesus was handed over and he was being beaten and he was going through this trial that was totally rigged, he was being beaten. And while he's being beaten, while all of this is going on, Peter is standing in the crowd and a servant girl walks up and says, hey, aren't you with Jesus? And he says, no, I don't know what you're talking about. That's one. Then another servant girl comes up to him a few moments later and says, hey, I know that you're with him. You're one of his followers. And he says, I don't even know the man. Number 2. And then later, one of the other bystanders in the crowd says, I recognize your accent. You have the same accent as he does. You're with him, aren't you? And he says, he makes a promise. He actually makes a curse and says, I do not know this man that you are talking about. And the Bible says in all 4 accounts of the Gospels, it says that immediately after that 3rd time, a rooster crowed. And in Luke's gospel, it actually says that when the rooster crowed, Jesus looked at Peter and caught eyes with Peter. And immediately he went away, weeping and crying bitterly because he knew that he had failed Jesus. Man, what a failure. I mean, Peter had been invited into this greater story, and now he had denied Jesus. He had taken himself out of the bigger story. He had completely removed himself because he had denied Jesus. And now that's the end of his story, right? I mean, that's how we all feel. We all feel like when we fail, that's the end of our story. We all feel like, God, I messed up. God, you can never use me. God, I can't believe I did this. And what causes us to do is pull away. And a few days later, after Jesus is crucified, dead, buried, he raises again. A few days later, we see that Jesus is with the disciples for the third time. And I kind of wonder if maybe that's what Peter had done. 3 times, we don't see them having any kind of discussion about any of this. But the third time, Peter and Jesus are now having this conversation. I wonder if Peter had been pulling back from Jesus. And now Jesus is looking at Peter, and he says this. He says, Peter, do you love me? Peter says, you know I love you, Jesus. That's 1. Jesus asks him again. He says, Peter, do you love me? He says, you know I love you. That's 2. And he says, Peter, do you love me? Peter says, Jesus, you know all things, and you know that I love you. I don't think it's an accident that Jesus asked Peter 3 times, because Peter had denied Jesus 3 times, and now I think this is an opportunity where Jesus is saying, Peter, you might have denied me 3 times, but I want to remind you that you actually do love me. And when he says that to him, he actually says, I do love you, and Jesus responds and says, then feed my sheep. He says, I do love you, Jesus, and Jesus says, then lead my sheep. And then he says, Jesus, I do love you. You know everything, and you know I love you. And he says, then feed my lambs. And what Jesus is doing is he's calling him back in. He's offering that grace, because Peter probably was distancing himself. He was probably sitting back ashamed and embarrassed because there was this thing in the middle, this failure and this shame and this guilt that went with walking with Jesus, and now he had gone completely against everything he had said. Have you ever experienced that? Maybe you have a relationship with Jesus and you've experienced that fear, that failure, those mistakes, that shame, that guilt, and you think, you know what? God, I know I had a relationship with you, but now you can't use me because of that failure. This is Jesus saying to Peter, and really to all of us, that he says, this doesn't count you out. This is Jesus inviting Peter back in, because Peter's failure did not determine his future. He invites him back into the story and says, Peter, this doesn't count you out of the story. Your failure doesn't change everything. You're still a part of the story. And every one of us have felt that way at times in walking with Jesus. We've failed and we make mistakes, and we might have made promises and said, Jesus, I will never turn away from you. No matter what happens, I will never turn away. And then we make a mistake, and sometimes we feel like God can never use us again. But this is the story of Jesus coming and redeeming Peter. And this can be your story as well. We see the same thing with Brian. We see that he has this major obstacle in front of him that's going to stop him from fully experiencing everything that he had started to experience. And he had to face up to his bully. He had to face up to the one that says, you're not enough. And when he did, it changed everything. And in the life of Peter, this moment of Jesus telling him that despite this failure, you're still loved. You can still be a part of the story, and he invites you back in. So if that's your story, then I want to tell you that your failure, your shame, your guilt does not determine your future, and Jesus still invites you into the story. And now as we wind down the week of Beach Retreat, I want to remind you of something. I want to remind you that every single one of us, as we try to walk with Jesus, at times we're going to mess up. We're going to fail at times. But Jesus always invites us back into the story. Every day you have a chance to step into the bigger story. And just like Callie was singing to Brian at the end of the movie, she said, you have a story and yours has changed mine. Here's the thing, God wants to use you. He wants you to be a part of his story of changing other people, and he wants to use you to help change the lives of other people. And Brian said it in his clip. He said, it's amazing what can happen when you step outside of your comfort zone. So step outside of your comfort zone, overcome these obstacles. Don't allow anything to get in the way of you living out this amazing story that God has for you.